I want to tell you a story about how the mind and the body works, especially when it comes to anxiety. It's my belief that people remember stories much better than they remember facts or conversations. So I want to tell you a little story about how it works, and then I'll move on to show you the equipment that will demonstrate your anxiety. So I have a lot of stories, been doing this for a long time, and my stories all start with the same thing, back in the day. So back in the day when our species was coming out of the primal ooze, out of the trees, God put us here or aliens beamed us down, don't care which model you work from, no one disagreed with the fact that the brain back in the day was a very simple, rudimentary organism. Now, part of that simplicity was to make your heart beat, your breathing, your blinking, body core temperature regulation, and a few other bits and pieces all have to happen without you thinking about it. That's called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, automatic, same thing. The other thing was, back in the day, we needed to be able to recognize and react to danger. That became known as fight or flight. Fight or flight is part of the autonomic nervous system. Think about it. You don't sit in a theater and look at the screen and something scary happens. You don't sit there and think, oh, I should jump now, or I should scream, or I should bolt upright in the chair. You don't. You just do it. So it's part of the autonomic nervous system. Now, caveman's got all that stuff going on board back in the day. And he's walking through a forest. A bush moves. He goes into fight or flight, which means, of course, that his heart beats faster, his breathing changes, adrenaline flow, muscle tension, or auditory acuity, visual acuity, all of that kind of thing happens without him thinking about it. It happens automatically. So he goes from being calm to aroused because he's not sure what's behind the bush that's causing it to move. Maybe it's a predator. But out steps a rabbit. Now, the minute that happens, caveman looks at it and goes, that's lunch. And everything that fired up now shuts down without him thinking about it, automatically. Now, let's fast forward to today. Our brains are much more sophisticated globally. But the part for the story has to do with this bit here. It's called the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is in charge of executive functions. Executive functions are sort of logic, reasoning, social awareness, those kind of things. Let's put modern man in the same situation as caveman, and I want to walk you through what I think happens in modern man's mind compared to what just happened with caveman. Now, every good story needs a bit of theatre, so bear with me. I'm going to do a little bit of theatre now. I'm going to play modern man walking through the forest. So, here we go. Modern man walking through the forest. The bush moves. Oh, crap, what is that? I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Oh, it's a rabbit. What the hell's a rabbit doing running towards me? That should be running away from me. Wild animals don't run towards human beings. Wild animals and human beings. Oh, I was listening to the radio on the way down today. They was talking about something about a forest. I should have paid more attention. There was something about shallow graves in a forest. Well, that can't be shallow. It couldn't be here because if it was here, there'd be a bunch of blue and white tape all over the area and there'd be police. What if the guy who's doing these things, what if he heard the same thing I did on the radio and moved to another part of the forest? No, that's ridiculous. There's no way that there's a serial killer standing behind that bush. The bush did move and the rabbit came out and there's something wrong in all of that. Rabbit bush. Ah, it was a snake. There was a snake wrapped around the bush. The snake was going after the rabbit, which caused the bush to move. The rabbit saw the snake going towards it, and it ran away from the snake and accidentally ran towards me. Got it. I'm not going anywhere near that bush. The pathomon goes past the bush. I remember reading somewhere that you shouldn't step off a path in a forest. I think, is that because you get... And what about snakes? Are they like cockroaches? You see one and there's 10 you don't see? I'm going to stand perfectly still here and have a bit of a quiet look around. Damn, my heart's starting to beat really fast. That's not good. Oh, shit. I remember my father had a heart attack when he was about my age. That's hereditary. I bet it calls... I've got no cell phone coverage. Shit, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to fall down there and have a heart attack. And if I don't die from the heart attack, that snake's going to come over here while I'm dealing with my heart attack. And it'll bite me and I'll die of snake bite venom. Let's step away from the story for a minute. Can relate to any part of that with regards to the way that the mind kind of wanders off to Badlands. If you can, What we're talking about here is there's three important parts of this story that I think apply with regards to anxiety. The first one is this story isn't about anxiety. This story is about shutting it off. In both stories, it's true the bush moved. There is something wrong with that. But unlike caveman who goes from calm to aroused and back to calm in a blink, we don't. We go from calm to aroused and then here. And that's when the mind kicks in and we start creating more agitation. Now, this might take place over the course of a week, an hour, a day, a month. But the thing is, the body can't deal with that. And as it starts to vacillate back towards that higher arousal point, stuff happens. Now, physiologically, things like heart attack, they think they're having a heart attack and end up in ED departments, and it's a panic attack, or migraine headaches or ulcers. Those are kind of physical responses to the anxiety. But then the mind picks up on ways to be able to look at ways to shut this thing down. Unfortunately, substituting it with other things, like people needing to count in twos. Or I have a lady who has to have her pegs on their line in a certain colour. If they're out of order, she's got to put them back. I've got another person who comes all the way from Joondalup down to the city on the train. Gets off at every station because they believe their bladder is going to give out. They're going to be embarrassed because they're going to pee themselves on the train. I have another person who won't step on cracks. I have another individual, young man, won't go to university because he's afraid of touching doorknobs. And the only way he can touch doorknobs is to have socks on his hands, because you can clean socks. It's hard to clean gloves, right down into the crevice of the glove. So he understands that if he's wandering around the campus with a pair of socks on his hands, using them to open doors, he's going to feel very embarrassed. So he doesn't go. People don't leave their homes because they're agoraphobic. All sorts of things take place based on anxiety. So the issue is shutting it down. Not that we get anxious. That's a human condition. Shutting it down is the problem. So, shutting it down. I want to point out again that your blinking and your breathing are part of the autonomic nervous system. You can blink like an idiot, though, if you like, and you can stare. You can basically regulate this, and the reason you can do that is you can feel the muscles doing it for you. Therefore, you get that information that things are going on because of the muscle tension. You also have that visual effect. You blink and you see this kind of blinking event where you only see things on and off. Therefore, you know you're blinking. The same is true of your breath. Your breath you can regulate any way you like, and for the same reason. Now, your heart, most people can't feel their hearts. But if I hooked you up to a heart monitor, wouldn't it be reasonable to think that I could, over some period of time, be able to get you to regulate your heartbeat based on seeing it on a monitor? It's indeed possible. Now, here's the real fun part. If you can regulate the autonomic nervous system, if you can see it, you can regulate it, and fight or flight is part of the autonomic nervous system, and fight or flight is what I'm going to use in this story, basically anxiety, or the same condition that exists when you are anxious, then it becomes reasonable to believe that if you can see your anxiety, you can shut it off. Think about that for a minute. If you can see your anxiety, you can shut it off. Now, this is where this technology that I was just talking about comes in. It's called biofeedback. To explain it a little more detailed, there's two areas of stress that I didn't mention when I said the things that take place automatically. It has to do with this hand, your hand, both hands. The issue is that the hand gets cold and clammy when people are upset, stressed. Now, why does that happen? Well, the peripheral flow to the fingertips pinches down, pushing the blood back to the muscle groups under fight or flight, and therefore the hand gets cooler. Now, with the moisture, I want to tell you a little story about that one. Now, this may not be entirely accurate, but it makes for good listening and it's a good story. Have you ever watched a boxing match? If you have, you might have noticed that when the boxers step into the ring, their faces are all very shiny. I wonder why that is. The answer is simply they're going to get hit in the face. They want that glove, dry glove, to slip the punch. So they put Vaseline and things. But if it's a dry glove, meaning dry skin, it pulls, it tears, and it bleeds. And they don't want that in a boxing match. Back in the day when our species was defending itself, much better a predator did this than this and pull us off our feet and make us vulnerable on the ground where we are quite defensive, not very offensive. So, old part of the brain still providing aspects of old brain thinking. Okay, now biofeedback, the system I'm going to show you today, is going to measure your hand. We're going to look at a warm, dry hand is calm, a moist, cold hand, not so much. You're not going to freak out in here, but this system is incredibly sensitive, and I think you'll see just exactly how sensitive it is. So that's the story. That explains the anxiety. It explains why my technology is going to be used. Let's do that now.